Okay, great. Well, I'm excited to talk to you guys. Copilot is a software product that helps managers become better coaches. And one of the reasons I'm excited to talk to you about is the getting your feedback on the following challenges or asks that we have. So, one is non-tech industries that this could apply to. My background is in technology and selling technology, and so the applicability of this to non-technology industries or non-tech industries, I'd be interested to know if you have specific experience yourself, or if you know someone that you can connect me with that can allow me to continue learning about the applicability there. So that's the first one. The second thing is there's a go-to-market strategy that I'll explain at the very end, and it hinges around partners and referrals that we can use to provide thought leadership out to the marketplace. So incubators, accelerators, and the like, and also financial consultants, right? People who have an adjacent service that they provide to the similar client base. And then the third and the fourth one might be seen as aligned together, right? It's user adoption, it's the value ultimately that the organization is able to derive from it, and the specifically it's do we or should we supply or frame coaching or consulting as a service that is joined with the software product. And the reason I bring that up is because Copilot was birthed out of a consulting firm that I started about 5 years ago. It still exists. We provide sales managers and sales operations on a fractional basis to early stage companies or companies that don't have a strong sales muscle in place. And we had great success, and that meant we had to develop an internal methodology and process. And that methodology and process has then eventually become Copilot, right? It was a series of Google Sheets, then it became a software product. Then our clients that were the consulting clients started using it, and now it's a separate entity, a separate LLC, and we've had a lot of great success. So it's a SaaS product that helps sales reps achieve better results, and it leverages statistics and sales enablement strategies in together in unison to derive that. So the size of the problem, the reality of the problem, we all know that the typical manager, it has been a great individual contributor prior to that point, and they get promoted into that role. And now they have a set of challenges that they hadn't yet had to face as an individual contributor. That relationship between the manager and the individual is one now where we're just focused on, asking questions in a one-on-one about, hey, what are we going to come in this month, right? What are you going to bring in? What are you going to close this month? Or they would ask, what can I do? Or what do you need help with? Right. So there's a lot of bias that we're introducing into the equation, into that meeting. And it's known by groups like Gartner and Miller Hyman how common coaching isn't a strength of managers, but how strong of a correlation there is between win rates and effective coaching. So Copilot removes that bias from the equation. The Moneyball book, right? Getting on base. We allow individuals to get on base more often, more frequently. The leveraging of the CRM data that they have, we ingest that and we run algorithms against that to determine where each individual has the biggest opportunity to improve their own individual performance. And then we marry that with sound sales enablement strategies and practices and actions that they can take inside of the product. So we sort of merge those two together, which is a novelty and a new thing that the market doesn't have right now. So I'm going to go through the product real quick to give you a guidance on what it looks like. The first thing an individual would see is the stages that they operate in. So their funnel. So this is an example one for software. So presentation all the way through closed one. And we're highlighting the stage that they have the biggest variation from where performance could or should be. The next thing is we're answering some questions behind that. Where do you compare against your peers? And how is your recent trend in performance? So we're getting alignment and getting buy-in from the individual. And what you're seeing at the bottom, which we're going to sort of show over here, is that there are specific skills inside of each stage that are more predominantly demonstrated. And so we know this fundamentally. So we have activities and skills that sit behind it. So if a manager and an individual elect to work on a particular skill, we remind them as to why. And then we walk them through an activity that they can go through. And these activities are short in duration in the sense that they might only take 2 hours to do or an hour and a half, but they're meant to promote thought, reflective, and to be able to own a little bit more of the development of their own plan. What I mentioned a little bit about the forecasting bias that someone introduces, there's commonly a sandbagger or someone who's overly optimistic. And so we use something called the rule of 5, which allows the organization to calibrate around the bias that an individual has. So whereas ideal means I always accurately forecast, we know that there's tendencies for someone to be off or askew. And now we know exactly what those are, which allows us to introduce something even a little bit more complex, which is called a Monte Carlo simulation. So Monte Carlo simulation, some of you may have heard of this. It is a complement to the existing way of forecasting, but it gives you a little bit more reality about where you could land based off of simulations and based off of your individual experiences and your bias. So like I mentioned, there are some markets that we're interested in getting feedback on. I bolded them on the right. And as you might expect, the software product, it's a per user per month fee, but we have them as, it's not all one product. The base product is the analytics, and then the enablement and the forecasting are separate add-ons. And like I said, the optional coaching or consulting, we've always provided coaching and consulting because Scale Up was the spearhead, and then we brought them into the deal, right? But now the COPILOT is this, it could be a separate spearhead. And so how do we, or should we introduce coaching or consulting? The acquisition strategy, you can see I've highlighted some partner resources that we already work with, accelerators and incubators and services firms, and we have webinars and on-demand thought leadership that we give out, right? The intention is eventually you get referrals or you have them want to use the product. And then on the right side, we are engaging, we have a profit sharing model inside of the organization. The intention is to not raise capital right now, but to leverage the profits we're generating and then give them inside of the organization. So it's a little bit of a novel way in which we're approaching acquisition. I don't know if I run up on the 6 minutes, but let's hopefully that was it. And I'll just show these here as a reminder for the questions that I have asked. Thank you very much.
Oh, good idea. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Let me get my acting gear here. All right. Chat participants. Okay, I don't see any hands up. Let's see. All right, any questions from anyone?
Patrick,
I think Marcia, there we go. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting all these little blocks on my screen. Okay.
Okay, have you thought of, again, you just had some sample screens. Have you thought of changing the graphics to make it a little more interactive for all levels of employees? Because you're assuming that a salesperson is going to be super sophisticated and is going to read this. But sales organizations that are transactionally based may need something that's a little more graphically imbibing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a question, not a statement. I don't know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you don't see the full landscape of how those data points are shown. So it does seem, I understand how you could see it as pegging to that side because I'm throwing up, not throwing up, I'm putting out some detail that sits behind it. But there are some graphic elements that are a little bit, say, bigger buttons and clearer. I was just showing you guys a little bit of detail that I would expect a user to quickly glance at and become familiar with over time. But yeah, I recognize that. What
is your I don't see any other questions as of yet, but what is your current paid user volume?
We have 50 users that came out of the Scale Up consulting clients that we have.
Okay. Does that say, what is your goal number? Do you have your projections or your goals? Are you using your own product?
Yeah, we don't have projections right now. What I'm hopeful of is by the middle of the first half of the next year, we'll be at 250,000 in ARR, so 20,000 in MRR.
Okay,
so that's the goal.
There you are. Okay, sounds good. And I see Patrick has his hand up, and then Brian. All right,
Patrick Rooney has a question as well.
there we go. And unmute here. Let me unmute you. There you go. Oh, yeah.
Very good. Okay, we're back. Okay,
We're back.
I just want to thank you for the presentation first and foremost.
Mhm.
It's really kind of a odd timing and coincidence. I picked up a new client in my consulting practice that is a remote team, California, Alabama, and the tech center is in Pune, India, outside of Mumbai. And one of the platforms that we are trying and integrating with while we build our own low-code, no-code Appian-based technology platform to integrate AI into just what you're trying to do, sort of a part of that. So we're tied in with freshsales.io. You're familiar with that platform? This is a CRM tool with a lot of embedded AI. So we have been having the discussion talking to your value proposition for 2 or 3 months, which is if you're driving leads and generating leads and it's all B2B tech firm deals that we're supporting, then maybe it's the sales force and not the quality of the leads, because you get a lot of this, right? Well, the leads are no good. Well, your salespeople don't know how to sell. Things like that. So it seems like your tool would have quite a horizontal market appeal. Probably framing, the value props and your scripting by segments would be important. But I think it's fascinating because the notion of integrating a platform that would do some of the things you're doing in monitoring performance, conversions, projection variances on funnels, and then looping embedded training content within that. That's exactly what we are looking for. So I know this is not a sales pitch at all. It's a presentation. But again, how strangely coincidental. I'll be glad to hook you up with those folks. The CTO is also the CEO, and he's been in the CRM tech business for decades. And when he did a huge exit in the 90s, he bought a hotel in the beach in Brazil and went there and ran it for decades. Now he's back creating more tools. We've been in bed with HubSpot. He knows the CEO. He knows a bunch of really important people in the market. So maybe there's a connection there. He's also half past crazy, Douglas. So I'll give you that up front. Okay. But I have an affinity
right?
I have affinity for clients like that. They're known as entrepreneurs.
Right.
Wow.
Well, thank you.
Love
Patrick.
it. This is awesome.
Hey, thanks, Douglas. We'll get back to you.
Great.
All right. Any other questions from anyone? Brian always has some good stuff. There he is. I see him raising your hand there. There you go, Brian.
I feel like I'm back in school again, raising your hand for the teacher. I went to Catholic school, so Dr. Graber has to have a long
Here's
yard
my-
to whack my knuckles and stuff. So I have to remember those days. So Douglas, quick question for you with the optional coaching. So do you coach virtually or do you go physically to the sites and talk with them?
Well, that's a good question. Scale Up started and it was all in person 4.5 years ago. And then the market had us, we had clients in California, like Patrick, we had clients in Virginia, we had clients in Denver. And so then some of the organizations said, no, it's okay, you can be remote. And so right now, or prior to COVID, I would say about 75% of our clients are actually remote.
Okay.
Nice.
And do you have any competition like in that you work with that do similar type of things to what you're doing at all?
Well, certainly the consulting side is very competitive, and thus the reason that I am very interested to get to know more and more of them, because this is a tool that could help them either deliver better value for their clients or win deals as a differentiator, because it removes the inconsistencies at which they might read the data, and it provides a crutch or a consistent way to coach the individuals. But on the software side, there are revenue analytics tools like an Insight Squared. It's very robust software for analytics. I would say enterprise analytics. You're talking 50 sales reps and above is when you start to want to get into that. The challenge with that is that people will structure that data almost like a Domo or a big BI tool without positing the hypothesis that they have in the beginning, without understanding how they will make decisions off of the data. And so what the difference here is that we've made the decision off of the data. The sales training and coaching is married with it. So there are sales trainers and sales coaches, right? And there are analytics tools, but the novelty is merging these things together. And I don't know of anything that's doing it just that way.
Yeah, it's very fascinating when you were going over that. And I was really fascinated by the way you pull it together. Is it tied to any specific sales? Like it can be any salesperson, like who sells payroll or cars or insurance? Or is it just open to all salespeople?
Well, that's the exciting and scary thing about this is that there is clearly it doesn't work in some areas. And I would say the sales people who have been in market for selling for 10 years, the same type of sales process. They're typically enterprise, and they typically are going to have a longer sales transaction with fewer count, smaller count, which means that confidence in the data is a little lower. But that being aside, if you are a salesperson, whether or not you're selling a house for $500,000 and getting a commission, as long as you're using a CRM with 3 steps in between, I can differentiate and determine where you sit on a standard deviation. I can tell you how you compare to people in your industry, and it doesn't really matter. Now, I don't know about selling cars, but because I don't have that experience, but whether it's selling a financial plan, an insurance plan, staffing, it could work.
Okay, and Marcia, does that answer it all? Cool. Marcia has a question for you.
Hey there, Doug. So I guess what industries do you have analytics on? And then what is considered success? How is success measured? And then number 3, do you have repeat clients?
I'm just writing down notes. So industries, as far as what benchmarks look like in different industries, is as long as they're running an outbound sales process, which is inclusive of probably telephone as a component, we have benchmarks in every industry that I'm listing up here.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the first thing. In part because we've worked with companies who sold software to those industries. So we sort of have gleaned that over time over the last 5 years.
Cool.
As far as what success looks like improving individuals' performance by about 30%. That's generally what you get across the board when you average it. They improve by 30%. And then I think the last question was repeat clients. Yeah, so all of our consulting clients, all of those users that we're managing at those consulting clients, those are all repeat, and some of them that we're no longer consulting are using the product.
Awesome.
Gotcha. Cool. Any follow-up questions from the audience?
Okay, there's no other. Oh, sorry, Maria, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, Marcia. So I do have one more question. Is there value with your tool, or can your tool be customized for non-sales functions?
What would be, I have some examples in my mind. Do you have an example?
No, I don't. Well, I want to hear what your example is.
Yeah. As long as it's a linear process and not circular, it runs the exact same methodology of determining conversion between stage, time between a stage and conversion between a stage. So there are some things related to account management, which might not be sales related, but the success of a customer. If you have differentiation between the stages, which I have friends that I've worked with that have experience in customer success, then it could work.
Okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you. I promise I'm done.
Okay, great questions.
Well, there's no more questions. The last question we have for you, Douglas, is what can our community do to help you out with your business?
If there are some, I don't know the area well enough, but if there is an incubator or accelerator that someone has a connection with in the area, I would love to connect and give them access to the on-demand workshops and free content that we have, and they can use their judgment to determine if they want to share that with their cohorts. That would be one. And then if there are outsourced financing accounting firms in the area that someone knows of, I would love, again, to connect with them also same vein, sharing our webinar and sharing our content, and they can use their judgment saying, yep, this would be great. I would love to share this with my clients to help them grow.
I highly recommend you follow up with Patrick after this call.
Okay.
We have no incubator.
Okay.
Temporarily, Hurricane Sally took the roof off and flooded the 4 stories of the building. We're under reconstruction, but yeah, I heard your pitch earlier. I was just teasing you with I have another practice outside of running the incubator, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we do have Jonathan with G Beta for the accelerator.
I would suggest that also. I think the folks at the spring and their programs might also be interested. Absolutely, Brian. Good call.
Gee, beta, right.
And Douglas, we can shoot some information on it, but it's called the Spring. And the Spring is located here in Pensacola, and they have what's called the G Beta. It's an accelerator that we have, and we're currently running our first pilot group through that process now. And the contact there is Jonathan with G Beta.
Are they related to Generator? That is out
Yes.
of
Yes, out of Wisconsin, from Midwest, right.
okay.
G-Beta is a 7-week cohort program.
Okay,
versus the-
great.
yeah.
Okay.
Right. Well, I think that covered everything.